Morning. In terms of housekeeping, we will ask everyone to stay muted for the initial part of the meeting, just while we go through some housekeeping, some introductions. Dave will lead a presentation, and then there will be a Q&A section. If you've got a really burning question or something's not working technically, then please do come off mute and shout at us. But generally, if we let Dave do most of the presentation, and then we'll break for Q&A, we'll open the floor. So is that okay for everybody? We have probably got multiple representatives from some clubs. The invite officially was the club lead, so we will ask club leads to speak on behalf of their club if they've got a question or if you've got multiple people in the room, so that we don't have an abundance from one particular club if there's any particular individual club issues that arise. But otherwise, we will crack on with the main business of the meeting. Just so you're aware of who is here, I've told you who I am. Of course, got Nick Edwards, who is the league manager, who you may well know. Phil Brayley, who I'm sure you know, liaison director from the board. Dave Evans, our head of performance participation. And Russell Edwards, office and business manager. And Tom Ross is off my screen, but is here. I know he's here, I can see him. Um, our membership and club engagers. So you've got the full gamut of Squash Wales here this evening. Just before Dave kicks off with his presentation, I just want to recap a few bits for people and give a bit of context tonight. Um, I do appreciate it is 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, and people are probably rather doing other things like watching Strictly, so there'll be no spoilers. But this is really the culmination of probably nearly 6 months worth of work. If you were present at the League AGM in July, you'll be aware there was a conversation there about a consultation that was going to happen. That consultation has indeed happened. Information went out to clubs in September, and that was based on prior conversations about teams predominantly in South Wales, or in the Southeast Wales, really, I should say, the east and west parts of South Wales, if that makes some sense, and the numbers of players and participation and concerns, etc. And so the board asked the office staff to do some work around that. That was the consultation that Dave and colleagues has been leading, and this is the culmination of that. And what we'll present tonight is hopefully some good options to move forward in the future. You may be aware that over that period, Squash Wales also released a new strategy, and as part of that strategy, we were very keen to say that we make data-informed decisions, and a lot of what we talk about tonight is based on data. It's based on the information that Nick has as league manager, and what we know around membership bases and facilities around the areas we're going to talk about. I think that's all we need to talk about, other than probably just to say from a board perspective, we have seen oversight of this over that period. We are tasked by US members and by Sport Wales as being the custodians of sports of squash in Wales. So we are quite supportive of the suggestions that will be put forward. Obviously, we will pause at the end, as I said, for Q&A, because inevitably there may be individual questions from clubs, and that's absolutely right and proper. But ultimately, we as a board will be supporting the proposals. So without further ado, Dave, I shall hand over to you to begin the bulk of the presentation.
Thanks, Richard. And thanks everyone for joining this evening. As Richard mentioned, briefly, I'll just sort of go over that. The reason why we're here tonight is over the last year, serious concerns have been raised by sort of various clubs in both the East and the West regions about squash's declining. Many have expressed their fears that there's fewer competitive fixtures, there's gaps between teams, all these different sort of areas, logistical barriers that are affecting participation. And obviously, as Richard alluded to, our aim of Squash Wales as custodians of the sport is to sort of protect, strengthen, and try to grow squash in Wales. So that's sort of why we are here. From the back of that, we had a consultation process which was sent out to all the club leads to ascertain your feedback, your views, your individual club views on what you thought of the league, the sort of the travel, etc., and any areas for improvement. And basically, sort of cut into the chase, change was needed from all your responses. This is and hence where Squash Wales then approached the board. The areas that sort of we the dissatisfaction with the current structure, with the non-competitive matches. Travel distances were a huge factor. Not enough fixtures, and there was a broad support for the restructuring process. Even though trying to sort of navigate the restructure, travel might increase slightly for some clubs, but there was a huge, overwhelming response about a change was needed. The reality is, from that, if we don't change, we could possibly or potentially lose the East and the West leagues, because the decline in player engagement, players not happy there. There's not many matches. There's walkovers, cancellations. So by not doing anything, we could lose the East and the West leagues, which obviously, from a Squash Wales point of view, is not ideal. We want everyone to be involved in league squash. But if we act now, as it says, we can actually rebuild the league again. We can strengthen participation, and we can secure the sport's future in South Wales and try to grow the league back to where it used to be prior COVID. Because one thing I know, everyone jumps on about COVID, or COVID this, COVID that, but society has changed a hell of a lot since COVID. People's views, people's commitments, a lot has changed since COVID, and that's not using that as an excuse. That is just reality. All sports have recognised this, so we're trying to sort of evolve with that to still have competitive leagues, even with people's commitments altering due to COVID. As I should have mentioned in an earlier slide, obviously Squash Wales, our commitment is to protect the future of league squash, but I go as far to say not just protect it, we want to grow it as well, make it sustainable. It's got to be fair, competitive, but we want to grow the game. We've listened to clubs prior to this. We listened to clubs following this, during and after, so we can make amendments and adapt the leagues accordingly to make it work for everyone. That's that's what we're here for, is to make sure the leagues. There will be little sort of areas that that change is sort of inevitable. That some people don't like change, but if we can grow it for the better of the whole game, then that's what we're there for. Just to give you an idea for the implementation timelines, the new league structure will begin January 2026. Following that league block, we will have more consultation with the club leads, as we did prior to this. And then for September 26, any adjustments or feedback we've had and refinements we can make, we can apply to the league again to make that even better, ready for September 2026. With regards to the league restructure, the new league model we're looking at or implementing is a South East League, a South West League, and a Pembrokeshire League. And what we're looking at doing with the South East League is combining East Central with South Central, some of the teams, same with the West, and the same with Pembrokeshire. So it will affect a few teams where they move different leagues as to where they possibly are now. But for geographical reasons and all the areas that we mentioned previous competitive matches, we feel this is the best option for the league moving forward. Just a quick, I don't know whether you can see that brilliantly on your screen, but that's the area of breakdown where you can see East, Central, and East, South Central, West, and the Pembrokeshire areas. That's the areas that we're looking to break down. And obviously there will be some teams on that border, but that's what we feel is the best way, following your feedback on how we move these leagues forward. This is a quick guide of teams in those new leagues. I'm not going to list all those teams. You can read those yourself. You can see the ones that have potentially moved across or moved to different leagues. But this will obviously become a lot more apparent when we know the results of this block of leagues finishing, as to which leagues everyone will go into ready for January moving forward. But I'll just sort of leave this up there for a little couple of minutes longer, or a couple of sort of seconds longer, so you can have a little look to see potentially where the teams are situated at the moment, as to how it affects yourselves. Whoops. Okay. Like I said, we can always come back to this slide, or if there are any questions towards the end, we can do that. But I just wanted to give you a brief, sort of idea where it's looking at present. Okay. Obviously, with the new sort of model, Squash Wales recognised that certain teams, there would be challenges with travel, and they might have increased slightly for one or two teams. So we've got a hub option venue in the southeast at the moment. Newport could be used as a hub, or any other sort of club around that area could be used as a hub. But we know Newport are open to this offer. So this is where originally we wanted to have a vote with the clubs to whether you wanted a hub option in, hub option out. But what we thought now is, rather than have a vote, we'll leave this option to yourselves. So if you're traveling more than 40 miles and both teams would like to use a hub option, as long as prior to the start of the season you inform the league manager, we can facilitate this to alleviate any travel issues that you might cause. If obviously you don't want to use the hub option, that's not an issue. Play home and away as you would do normally, but it's just another option there for you guys that to facilitate if you would like to use that. And sort of going back onto what we've sort of the reasons why we sort of are doing the sort of the restructure is the benefits of the restructure are going to be more competitive matches. Okay, there's a better balance between travel and participation. All right, there's an opportunity to grow club engagement, and more importantly, it's a greater long-term sustainability, because feedback we've received over the last 6 months is that the way the leagues are currently running, it's not growing the game. In fact, it's dwindling. So we need to step in to do something about this and move the game forward. Regarding the next steps, obviously at the end of the presentation or during this call this evening, we will answer obviously any of the questions on the new structure. As sort of mentioned previously, the new structure will be finalised sort of December, when all the sort of league matches are finished, when we know relegation, promotions, etc., ready to implement the new structure in January 2026. Like I said, the main thing for Squash Wales is our goal is pretty simple. We want to make sure league squash in Wales not only survives, but it thrives, and we can grow the game. And I think that's important, because we don't want to be we don't want teams sort of leaving the leagues and not representing the leagues like we used to. We want to grow them and get the game back to where it was prior to COVID. From this one, if I just hand you over to the league manager for the next couple of slides, as Nick can talk you through a bit more of the timelines, the actions, what Nick requires, and how the next perhaps couple of weeks will look, and what he needs from you. Nick will explain that in a bit more detail to you all. If I could pass that on to yourself, Nick.
Thanks very much, Dave, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for that. Yes, obviously there's a fair bit of change is going to be needed for the spring leagues, and I will need some data from the clubs to make sure we get these leagues in place in time for the spring. The key thing for me will be I will need to know from the clubs how many teams are going to be submitted per club. I will certainly need to know the home nights of those teams. I will need the ranking lists earlier than we anticipated that we normally have at the start of the season. I will need these a little bit earlier, and I'll come on to that in a moment. And if there's any other data, I will let you know as well. After this meeting, I will write out to all club leads with a documented list of dates that are crucial, basically, for making sure this data is with me. And unless I have that data, I cannot guarantee having the leagues ready for spring 2026. Just to go back to the ranking list for a second, we will be using the latest squash levels data that we have, and I will be sending that out on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. You guys will then have 1 week to look at those squash levels and come back to me then with your proposed rankings for the spring. That will become more apparent on the next slide. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the process for setting up the 2026 leagues for the spring, I will run the algorithms as set in the LCR, and we will then know which teams are in the Premier 1, Premier 2. We will know which teams are being relegated from Premier 2 into the current feeder leagues, and we'll know which current feeder leagues are feeding into Premier 2. That will remain as it has been all along. It has no effect on Eryri, North East Wales. The algorithms will run exactly as they have before. But what will change is when we know what the East Central, West Central, South Central would have looked like, those teams will then be reallocated into the two regions Dave has just described, the New South East and the New South West. Those positions in those initial leagues will be determined by the average squash level of the top 5 players in your teams. This is why I need to have the squash level rankings with me by the 10th of December at the latest. So I will basically reallocate teams from the current East-West, East Central, West Central, South Central, and they will be reallocated into Southwest and Southeast regions based on the average of the top 5 players, the squash level average of the top 5 players per team. As you saw from Dave's other slide, Meads and Carmarthen teams will be incorporated into the Pembrokeshire leagues. And again, I will need to know the squash levels of those players to determine where they will sit in the Pembrokeshire leagues. I haven't got a crystal ball, so I don't know exactly how many teams you guys are going to be putting in, but the new regions will be around about 50 teams in the New Southeast and around 30 teams in the New Southwest, which will give us a much better balance than we have at the moment. And as Dave has already said, will give more competitive squash. Could I have the next slide, please? Once the Spring 26 has been done, as David said, we will be looking at the results of that and getting feedback from clubs. And then at the end of the spring, we will apply the usual promotion relegation between Premier 1 and Premier 2. That remains as now. Then only 2 teams will be relegated from Prem 2 into the feeder leagues, which will be the South East and the South West. The feeder low leagues then will use the usual algorithms of 1 up, 2 down, 2 up, 2 down, whatever happens, depending on how many teams you receive from the Premier 2. This is the same as we have now, so there's no real change here. So just to recap, I will need some dates from you in the next week or two, and I will confirm that in writing in the next day or so. And I do implore people that I do need that data on time. Otherwise, setting up these leagues is going to be very, very difficult. I'd like to hand back to Dave.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Like I said, before we, that's sort of the end of the presentation. I'm sure there's obviously a lot to digest for everyone there. But we will be taking some questions, and so we can go around the room there. But like this slide sort of says, really, we realise change has to be done with regards to the league. That's from your feedback that you guys have given us, and it's not always easy change. And it will put some people out in that they might have a little bit more travel, but it's for the greater good of the game and the sustainability and more importantly, so the survival of our league. I'd like to bear that in mind. We don't just make these changes willy-nilly. It's for the good of the game and sort of the benefit of all involved. So I like to sort of I just want to put that back to Richard. But if there's any questions or any comments on what we've just discussed, please feel free to put your hands up or put it in the chat box moving forward now.
Okay, thank you, Dave, and thank you to everyone for listening patiently. We will take questions by show of hands ideally, and I'll try and scan through and catch you to put your hand up. If not, you can use the chat box. Or absolute worst case, if we're not spotting you, please shout. There is one question that's already gone in the chat, and this is probably one for Dave or Nick. Geraint Hodges, and I will ask if you do speak, perhaps you could tell us what club you're from, just so we know where the question's coming from. So Geraint Hodges.
I'm Toynbee.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Is a promotion from Pembrokeshire League to the higher leagues?
Will there be a feeder into the higher leagues from Pembrokeshire, basically, is what I'm asking. Is there a
Yeah,
chance?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pick that up if you like. The answer is no. There won't be an opportunity for being promoted from Premiership, from Pembrokeshire into Premiership. The distancings involved, as Dave's explained, are challenging to say the least. Phil, I don't know whether you want to add to that.
That's all. Just wanted to be
Okay.
clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to keep working my way through the chat box for now. Adrian Brace, just pop in there. If we don't know where I don't know where you're from. Others may do. Can you please explain the feed into Prem again from the 3 regions? So Nick, that's back to you. That one.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that one up. Promotion into the Premiership will run as the LCR says at the moment. The top of current South Central will go up, top of West Central will go up, and the top of East Central will go up. That is for this season only, and that will then determine who is in Premier 2 starting on spring 2026. There will be 3 relegations from Prem 2.
Okay, Jeff Lee, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute, but I'll just skip to Steve Thomas's because there's a written one in the chat, and then we'll give the floor to you, Jeff. Steve Thomas asks, will it be possible, this is Steve Thomas from Risker, will it be possible to play for more than one club playing in the same region?
Again, I'm happy to pick that one up. For the same reason that you're not allowed to do that now, the answer will be no.
Okay, Jeff, let's go to you. Nick, I've seen your hand up, so I'll come to you in a minute. So Jeff, go for it.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. It's more of a question, but some observations from the Monmouth Club. We fully recognise and understand the need for the changes that you are proposing. Monmouth is in a somewhat invidious position in that our geography in the most eastern part of Wales, virtually in England, makes travel a fundamental and major issue for us. So whilst we understand and respect and agree with all of the objectives except the travel that you've outlined, we currently have 3 teams in Squash Wales, and I clearly have to consult our membership, but I can see that reducing from 3 to 1, and I'll just characterise it in these terms. Currently, our longest away trip is Risker, 26 miles. That's perfectly acceptable. And for those who are well in touch with the geography, we're driving down the A40 to the Caldera, turning right, going under the Bringlass Tunnel for a 6:30 start somewhere. If I'm asking a B and C teams who are broadly social players who enjoy having a game of squash, a pint and a bite to eat, to travel from Monmouth to the other side of Cardiff, well, I regret to say that is not going to happen. And certainly 2 of our teams, I'm speculating, will suggest that they no longer wish to participate, and we will effectively withdraw. So those are observations that I feel it's important to make to you. I'll just make one other point. You're asking us as a club to consider some fairly fundamental issues relative to how we operate our club and how we interact with you. And you're imposing timeframes which are very much based on Nick's administration issues and may not necessarily give us the necessary time to determine what we're going to do, whether we participate in Squash Wales or whether we decide to decamp and move towards Gloucestershire or somewhere else. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman. I say it's not a question, more observations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was going to respond to you, but you've said it's a statement. I'll leave it hanging there for others to consider. I think that's fair. We may circle back to some of your thoughts. I mean, I would point out, the one thing I would point out to you is the conversation or the mention that's been made of using a hub, which would significantly reduce your travel potentially.
Mr. Chairman, can I just comment?
Yeah, of course.
I understand that, and Richard Drinkwater's proposal to use Newport was certainly tabled in a level of communication between the clubs of the East Central District earlier on this year, and it's a perfectly reasonable one. Our concern in using that is that most of the clubs, I think, except with the exception of Newport, use leisure centres. And our very significant concern is declining the usage of court usage within our centres and exposing us to the danger of losing those courts. So we're very keen to, maintain the usage we currently have, in the hope that Monmouthshire Council and all of the other councils within South Wales will decide to maintain squash courts within that area. But we're very reluctant to put some of our court usage down to Newport, not because we have any problem with doing that, but because that would potentially adversely affect us in decisions that may take place in Monmouthshire.
Okay, thank you. Comments noted. Nick, let's come to you.
Thank you, Richard. Richard, I've got a number of questions and observations. Do you want them all now? Do you want to take them in turn? Do you want to come back to other people?
Go on, you go for it, and I'll cut you off. I think you've got too many. Keep going. Go on.
Okay, I hope you don't cut me off, Richard, because this is important.
Please don't take that way. I'm just trying to make sure the meeting flows fairly for all. So let's go.
I understand. I understand now. You're not going to cut me off. Great. Just to agree with Jeff, by the way.
Which club are you from, Nick?
Meads. Thank you. Meads. The hub idea sounds good. Appears to answer, provide solutions, but actually, Jeff's right. If you are a geographically distant club, then you're going to have other clubs always asking whether you would play at a hub, and your own courts would never get usage, which would risk closure of courts. So I agree with Jeff on that point. Secondly, can you confirm how many clubs will no longer be involved in the structured league with an opportunity to play at the highest level in Wales?
That's a question for you, Nick.
Well, at the moment, as you know, Eryri are not eligible to play in the Premiership.
No, I mean the current situation. Sorry, Nick. Am I right? Is it just Meads and Carmarthen that have been excluded from the proposed setup?
With the new proposal, yes, they're the only
So
two
you've
teams
reorganised right across Wales, South Wales, but you've excluded two clubs, both in the West, Carmarthen and Meads. Nobody else is affected from the overall structure in terms of the opportunity for players in those regions to play at the highest level.
Well, the players can play at the highest level.
Just Carmarthen and Meads, yes?
The players can play at highest level if they choose to play for a club that is within that catchment area.
Oh, so a player living in one of those areas would be forced to go and play for a club in another region, and their home night, not just their away night, to always travel as well.
Correct.
So just for everyone on this call to be aware that only two clubs have been removed, in effect, from the South Wales leagues. They're both in the West, Carmarthen and Meads. And I think that is unfair, and I think that blocks pathways.
Okay.
The next point I want to make is a question. So if players played in the Pembrokeshire League, they could, if they and they may be forced to, also or instead play in one of the other leagues. They'd have to travel, as I said, but they'd be able to do that, yes?
The current rule says exactly that. If you're playing in a Pembrokeshire League and you want to play in a team that's in a different league, such as the South West, that would be allowed, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Couple of points to note here. Will you be publishing the responses?
No, because we never intended to do that in the first place. So people would have need to have known that when we issued the consultation. It wouldn't be fair to now go back and retrospectively publish things.
No, most consultations, they publish the responses so that we can see what people have said.
Whereas we never said that at the start, so we don't.
No, I know you haven't said that, and actually the consultation, therefore, I think, has been hidden, and we can't actually see what people feel. And the fact that it was one response per club means you're not actually listening to all the players in the leagues. and then we don't even get to see what the responses are
Okay, hang on, Nick. Hang
behind the
on.
proposal.
Hang on. Let me just think about it. I think it's quite reasonable that we will publish a summary of the consultations, but we have not asked people or told them they would be identified through that process. So it would be unfair to identify people latterly.
No, quite right too. I
So
wasn't asking for that.
we will publish a summary of the consultations,
So
which
we'll
we
be able
may
to see.
we may
we'll be able-
theme them to
Yeah.
make it so they are not identifiable, because
So we'll
obviously
be-
one person per club may have responded, which if their response identifies them, that's unfair.
Yeah, no,
But
I'm
we
not
may need to
asking.
theme them accordingly so that you get a feel for the feedback that has happened.
Yeah. I'm certainly not asking for it to be.
So I think within reason, we're quite happy to prepare a précis or a reasonable summary of the consultations received.
Brilliant, thank you. And could that summary please identify just how many responses were in favour of a particular course of action, please?
I don't know that we asked for a particular course of action, so you may not get a direct answer to that.
Well, in which case we can't actually see what the result of the consultation
Well,
was. We
okay,
just
we
have your
can-
conclusions.
Nick, we can try and offer you the best response as we can. As I've said, there are some restrictions around that about what we've asked people to tell us and what we can then share subsequently.
I'm
So
not
we
asking. I'm not asking for it to be not anonymized, but I'm just asking that for a decision to have been taken which has such an impact on these two clubs and only these two clubs, as well as on the structure across the board, I think it's only fair for us to actually see, well, what was the weight of response in terms of
And
what people were saying. So it would be good to see that, please.
as I committed to, we will certainly publish something. Phil, do you want to come in there? Because you
Yeah.
are quite central to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the consultation process was part of this process. It wasn't the deciding factor, but it helped to frame our views. We've been looking at this problem for quite some time, and the consultation process helped us frame part of our decision making in terms of what we have delivered tonight. So it's not the sole product that has decided what we were going to do. Just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Further points, Nick?
Yeah, please. Just while we're talking about consultation, I do find it surprising that you're presenting something on the evening and asking us to be able to respond and consider, instead of giving us time to consider the proposal and then come to the meeting more prepared. So we're having to do this on the hoof, and I suspect you're going to ask for a vote soon, and that's unusual. That's unusual with consultations as well.
No,
So
there's
no vote this
no
evening, is
votes.
that right?
No vote. So I don't
No
know
vote
where
this
you've
evening.
got that from. No, there's no vote that we are presenting the proposal for the league for January onwards.
Oh, it's happening.
Yes,
Yes.
Oh, it's happening without a vote.
yes.
Yes.
So you're not without. Okay, so no vote, which you
It's
would normally
happening
have to do at an
because
AGM.
for all the reasons that we have identified, that we need to make some changes for the global good of the sport within South Wales.
Yeah, but you're not asking for a vote from member clubs. You're asking for
No.
a response in a consultation which you won't publish fully.
No,
So I don't feel
no.
it's,
Okay,
I don't
Nick,
feel it's democratic,
Nick, you
Richard. I'm sorry.
can take a view of this, and that's absolutely fine. We've tried to explain what we need to do, and as I mentioned at the very start, we have to take a bigger view of what is happening around the league, the participation, and make some tough decisions and try and be honest with our members. And that's what we're trying to do tonight by being as open as we can and saying this is what we've asked. We've taken into consideration what we've been told. We've looked at the numbers. We've looked at participation rates. We've looked at the the walkovers, the cancellations, all of those things. It leads us to this point.
Okay. Lastly, I just want to, not quite lastly, second to last, just want to make the point that a drive from Llanelli to Bridgend in that new southwest region isn't a vastly different length of drive than it is from Llanelli to Milford.
Okay.
And then finally, you've answered Geraint's question. There'll be no route to Prem for clubs in Pembrokeshire. Would you reconsider that?
Not at the
Not at the
moment.
moment. Not at the moment.
Okay. But in the light of the point I've made that only two clubs are affected in terms of players living in their area, playing for their club, being able to play at the highest level in South Wales, you've basically excluded two clubs and no one else.
Nick, I
Right.
think you have to remember we have other leagues in Wales who also cannot access the highest level of squash in
I
Wales.
understand that, but they're in the north.
And
We're in South
And-
Wales. And you call it a South Wales league. It's not if Pembrokeshire are not involved.
no, but I think my point is that when you look at squash across Wales, we are not as inclusive as we'd like to be because of the geography of Wales.
Yeah.
That if you're
I
a great
can see
player in
that. So
Wrexham or a
I can see
great
that.
player
I
in
can see
Northwest
that.
Wales,
So
you cannot
you're
access.
I can see that, and it strikes me, it feels to me, because we've been presented with this and asked to comment and ask questions all in the same evening. It feels to me like you're saying we want to encourage inclusion by excluding 2 clubs. So there we are. Thank you.
You can spin it that way if you wish.
I'm
but
not.
I
No,
think
that's not. Please, Richard. It's not spin. It's my point of
you
view.
can interpret it that way if you
Yeah.
wish. But I'm afraid the way we've looked at this across the piece, and that's the conclusion that that working group have come to.
Yep.
And the board have supported that.
Nick, I can give you some more information on that in terms of your point. The view we took was that there were a lot of clubs that specifically, a number of clubs in the area that specifically complained about travelling to Meads. The view is that if Meads were able to go into Premier, that travel would be severely exacerbated by taking trips from Cardiff, Newport, and the East region down to Milford Haven that potentially involved a 3-hour drive. Not acceptable for all the teams in a Premier League. That is why that decision was taken. Now, I know you're not happy about it, but for the vast majority, that is a decision that will be welcome. So, and if you have any players in your region that have the desire to play at the higher level, that route is through clubs in the new South West region.
Yeah, and just to thank you, Phil. I understand that. I understand what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is, if you are a player in that region, you have no pathway in your own region to play that. You must travel for every game you play. And and instead of some people traveling every so often, once or twice in the season, you're asking a player in our region to travel every single week for their squash at that higher level.
Which is better
and I believe that's unfair.
Which is better than 35 players who are playing in a league having to travel to that destination, which is wholly unreasonable in today's age to travel between 2 and 3 hours for a squash match.
Nobody travels between 2 and 3 hours. Nobody
This is
travels between 2 and 3 hours to come and play at our club.
You
Sorry,
would
can
if
you
you
just
were
not be
in-
disingenuous, please?
You would no, you would if you were in the highest league. Don't be ridiculous, Nick. You've got somebody who's playing out of Monmouth. If Monmouth has a team in the Premier Division, and you got promotion from Meads into the Premier Division, how long do you think it's going to take to get from one side of Wales to the other?
Yeah.
In an evening.
Phil, I'm not being ridiculous, please. I don't like the way I've been spoken to here about being told.
Well, I don't like
Okay,
some of your
gentlemen,
comments saying
gentlemen.
that we've excluded
Gents.
teams.
I'm trying to give my points in good faith.
Okay, stop,
and then
please,
I'm being
Nick.
told ridiculous and told I'll be
Nick.
cut off.
Nick, okay, you've had plenty of time to have your say, which I think is fair. We've responded. Let's move to someone else who wants to make a comment, please. We've got a question in the chat from Adrian Brace. Says, well, actually a couple of bits. When you created the proposal, did you as a group make any estimate on the number of teams or clubs you think might drop out completely? Do you have a threshold on what an unacceptable loss is, and it goes against the objectives and thus needs a change of tact? Subsequently, Adrian's then put, is it fair to say this may have to be a trial, but perhaps for a season or two before potentially reviewing the actual impact, positive or negative? Dave, I think that is covered in your slides, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that we will do this and then we will we reflect on this after certainly the
Consultation
first
again.
season. Yeah. So-
Consultation again. Any comments, feedback, like we did prior to this, to make any adaptations to the league.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, we would not just leave this as is. We need to keep looking at it, see how it goes, see what changes we see in terms of participation. Jeff, do you want to come back in?
I just want to point out, I'm not trying to be difficult here. I just, even coming into this meeting, I didn't consider the impact, like the participation level at leisure centres dropping being a threat to squash at the leisure centres. It's just a thing that's never occurred to me. I mean, it probably doesn't affect us in this proposal, but yeah, I just wondered if you guys had, made an estimate of the initial negative, because I think it'd be difficult to measure the positive until a long.
No, to be honest, we can't, because we don't know until people decide where they want to play. If they want to use a hub for a one-off game, I don't think that's going to have a long-term impact.
Yeah.
If they decide to move en masse to a location, well, yes, it will, but we are not enforcing any movement of anyone anywhere. We're giving you the option if you want to meet with Midway. That's perfectly okay. We would absolutely support that, and we would support that anywhere in Wales.
And to be honest, Adrian, on a different note, with regards to East and West, the way the East League is running, they might not be running anymore anyway, the way the teams are dropping out. So something had to be done to actually facilitate play as well in that area, if that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't ask the question of what you estimated if you didn't make any change, the dropout would be as well, which would, might have actually helped in this scenario.
Yeah, well, I think that we did, and we know that it will suffer and with it and die, and that's our real concern, and that's why, as Dave said, some change is necessary. May not be popular, but we've got to do something different. We've got to try something different anyway. Jeff, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. There seems to be a take it or leave it option. There's no choices within this. It feels like it's very much a decision for the better clubs, better quality teams within Wales generally. It doesn't feel to me like it is doing anything to promote squash at the sort of lower and social levels. And I just make one other point to you. Monmouth A won Division EC1 around 12 months ago. I have the prize just behind me in my office here. And we couldn't proceed into Premier B primarily because 4 of our players are based in England or English based, and we fell on the nationality issues. So, we're doing our best to stick with South Wales, but I have to tell you, it's becoming more and more difficult. And we're one club, so you're taking a decision on the whole of Wales, and we're probably irrelevant in all of that. But this feels like frankly, a bitter pill to swallow, and we will need to take some decisions on where we go from here.
Right. Okay, Phil, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I just want to come back in with regards to the, I think a couple of questions on, did we consider if we would lose any members or teams? Yes, we did. We've had this historically within Squash Wales, and Nick will be able to attest to this. Every year we seem to get a raft of players that come in and say, I want to play with my mates, or some other reason, which puts them out of the squash level score, and we've not allowed it. And we've said, no, you have to play. We've made an allowance of 20%. That's enough. You have to play to make it fair for everybody, so you don't have somebody in a team that's thumping somebody 3-love every month, every week, and everybody's complaining about it. So people have said, well, look, if you don't do that, this team will fold and this player won't play. It has never happened. So based on historical data, those kind of suggestions haven't come to fruition. If they do now, we will take that on board and we will look at it. And this will be part of the ongoing review process. So at the moment, what we see is this helping clubs that are dying, helping clubs that are losing members, and bringing down the amount of travel that potentially is being involved. So the point that this is for the better clubs, to be quite frank, is absolute nonsense. And I speak on behalf of the whole group that has put this together. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because a lot of the lower standard players have said, I'm not traveling 50 miles for a game of social squash. So we've taken that into consideration as well. And then I want to make one more point about voting. So the reason that we haven't put this to the vote is that if we did, South Central as a current region could outvote the whole of the rest of South Wales. So South Central, who don't really have an issue at the moment, squash is thriving there, clubs are doing well, plenty of players, they would just say, we're happy with the status quo. We're not going to vote for any change. Then we carry on, then we would lose potentially Southeast and Southwest regions. So that is the reason we took the decision as the governing body who have governance for the whole of squash in Wales to make this decision. And I know it's not going to be popular with some people, but for the majority, it's going to work, we feel.
Great, thank you, Phil. Blethyn from the Vale's got a technical question for you, Nick, which is about start times. Will be increased travel? With increased travel, will be consideration of the start times? In some sense, 18:30 could be too early. There's a sort of follow-up related question below that from Noah Jones. I don't know what club you're from, Noah. Most midweek games 6:30. A lot of teams have to take time off work because of rush hour traffic, Cardiff, Newport, etc. And from memory, the league spans Abergavenny, meaning our journey will be well over an hour rush hour traffic. So mainly it's a question around start times, etc. Nick.
Yeah, well, the current rule on start times is games must start somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30, and we give that as flexibility to the clubs, bearing in mind leisure centre bookings and various other considerations for the club itself. It seems a fairly wide window, 6:30 to 7:30. If there is an issue with travel, you can negotiate with the home team. If they can accommodate you, fine. But the rule at the moment says any time between 6:30 and 7:30 is an allowable start time.
Okay, thank you. There's a question in the chat as well from Robin Livermore. Again, I don't know what club you're from, Robin, but fair point says, general point, Mark, getting more people playing team squash requires getting new young players into all our clubs, rearranging chairs in the Titanic. I'll ignore the last sentence, but I agree absolutely around the juniors. Tom, do you want to say anything on that, Tom Rosser, around juniors and getting juniors into sort of transitioning from junior squash to team squash?
Yeah, well, the pathway is there. We just need, there's no juniors without coaches. So we have our coaching pathway. It's actually in review, and there'll be more information on that come the new year. But essentially, we need to build our coaching base in order to build our junior program, which will then filter in to our leagues.
Okay, thank you. There's a subsequent question. Mark Palmer, run Leisure Centre. If my maths is correct, every single away match except one is more than 40 miles. Therefore, to agree hub matches when we travel, I assume we would do the same for home matches. Therefore, we'd have one home match per season at our own Leisure Centre. Mark, I don't know where you are, so I'm afraid I can't give you a specific answer. Do you want to broaden that and speak?
We're in Merthyr, Rich.
Okay. Do you want to just speak a bit more around that?
Very, very quick maths. Obviously, only had the clubs not long ago. I believe Her Wine would be our only one within 40 miles. Obviously, that's only like 3 or 4 miles down the road. But all the Llanelli teams would be 41 miles. Llandilo 50 miles, Swansea 42 miles, Maesteg 47, Bridgend 47. So if we're going to ask when we travel to arrange a hub match, then I assume the same, would be on offer for when we have the home match. If all of those matches for all of our teams, except for when we play Her Wine, are going to be hub matches, then we're going to have one home match in Merthyr Leisure Centre. So that will directly affect court usage. And we're struggling at the minute to get courts, to get enough courts as it is. So if they take the courts away from us.
Yeah. Okay, understood. Nick or Phil, do you want to say anything to that one? Because
it's not compulsory to have to play at a hub. It's entirely down to both teams if they want to do it. Other than that, you can travel.
Yeah, I think a lot
Very
of
generous
this,
of you, Phil. Thank you.
It's about you can do 40 quick miles or 40 or 20 really rough cross-country miles and the time is the same. I think there's an element of you decide what works best for your club, whether you want a hub or not. You're not, again, we're not voting. You have to or you don't have to use one. There's an element of you choose which suits you best, and for all the reasons you've outlined, it may be better you stay as you are playing in Leisure Centre and keep your courts. Arian Crab, will all teams in New South West and East Leagues be re-ranked based on top 5 average squash levels? Nick?
The short answer is yes. When the new leagues are put in place for January, I will look at the teams that are currently will be in this new Southeast, New Southwest, and they will be ranked according to the squash level of their top 5 players per team. This should ensure keeping squash far more competitive, far more whitewashes going on, and that's where it will initially be set up.
Okay, fine. Just if you're not
Richard.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Caredic.
Okay, can I just bear with me 1 second? I'll come back to you. Just let me keep going on this theme of start times for 1 moment.
Yeah.
Jeff has just added in the chat, Bournemouth Leisure Centre close at 9:30, therefore start time 6 days necessary to completion of games. So just so in case you're not seeing the chat, folks, that is also in there. And just finish this chat. Okay, there go. I haven't forgotten you. Nick, there's a question here. Timescales not appropriate. Ask confirmed teams by Wednesday is unrealistic. Trying to encourage juniors and ladies players in the league. Extra travel won't aid this. So do you want to just talk about the timelines, Nick?
Yeah, I think there may be a misunderstanding here. I said that I would send you information by Wednesday, not you have to get it back to me. I'll be sending out the squash levels, the current squash levels for players by Wednesday. You can then have a week to look at those squash levels, put your players into whatever order you want them for the ranking, and then get that back to me.
My apologies, Nick.
I don't need stuff back from you by Wednesday. While I've got the chair, actually, well, sorry, not the chair, but while I've got the air, just to pick up what Merthyr just said, we did look at the mileages. And there's only, I think it's 3 clubs that are more than 40 miles away. I've used Google Maps for this, and they're at a sort of 6 o'clock travel time, and most of the teams are playing Merthyr are under 40 miles. So I'm not quite sure where the sort of difference comes there.
It's just very quick maths in the last 10 minutes. That's all it is. So I'll have to go with that.
Well, I've got Bridgeton as 29, David Lloyd Swansea as 26. Who Wine is obviously 8 on the doorstep, and there are then some other 40s, but it's not as you suggest virtually every match.
Okay, Caredic, let's go with you.
Okay, yeah, I'm representing the club this evening, so I was I'm familiar with the technology, but sorted now. I've played in Wales for the last 35 years. And Carmarthen at the time had 3 teams playing in the Pembrokeshire League. And I joined, and one of the teams, we played in the West Glamorgan. And ever since then, we played in the West Glamorgan, which then became South Wales West. And for Carmarthen to travel to Swansea is very, easy, Llanelli easy. Suddenly, we're now reverting to as we were 30 odd years ago. And I'm not aware that much consultation was taken in terms of, finding out answers to this problem. Having said that, Meads have got an amazing track record of playing high standard squash. And then suddenly they're now excluded from accessing the top squash in Wales. And there's evidence that they've been there comfortably. So, I don't know where this takes. Suddenly, you seem to have arbitrarily, drawn a line across. So Llandeilo somehow are within South Wales, but Carmarthen are not. And yet the travel distances, as Nick Edwards would know, are very, very similar.
I'm just reading in the chat. Okay, do you want to come back on Caredic's points? I mean, it's not dissimilar to the points made by Nick from Meads.
The only thing to add to that, I'm not sure whether Phil wants to counter this, is that because the southwest now has a different boundary on its easternmost region, Carmarthen has become even further out from that far region, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've suddenly gone further west.
We haven't gone suddenly further west, but the travel distance that you would have had to make in the old West Central is now greater in the new southwest.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's most definitely a disservice to squash in Meads in particular, and certainly Carmarthen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Points clearly noted from both clubs that have spoken from Pembrokeshire Leagues. I'm just continuing through the chat here.
One thing, Richard, there's a question earlier on from, I think it's from Steve Thomas. Will it be
Steve.
possible to play for more than one club playing in the same region? That's from Steve Thomas at Risca.
I did answer that one earlier.
We answered that.
The answer was
the answer is no.
I might have missed that. Sorry.
No, that's all right. No problem. Right, I'll keep going through here. Nick Dyer, when rule changes are proposed, they must go via a vote. Member clubs at AGM or EGM. Why is this different? At the last AGM, a vote was taken to agree a consultation regarding restructure. I do not recall the last AGM giving delegated powers to any body to change the structure without a vote by clubs. Technically, that is true. However, Nick, if you dig into the articles of the league, and the league is a subset of the Squash Wales articles, then Squash Wales has overall jurisdiction board to make decisions on how squash operates in Wales. And essentially that falls into this category, in that this has been a conversation that's been going on for some time. It's been brought to the board, presented at the last board meeting, which was only November the 20th. And the board are in support of this change to the leagues because of all the reasons we've discussed. So from a governance point of view, it is correct. Whether you like that or not, I'm afraid that is the process. And we have in the past had to invoke that for something. I can't remember what it was around the leagues. It's a couple of years ago now, but that process there is so that the board have oversight of squash more generally. The leagues are not a separate body from the rest of Squash Wales. Pembrokeshire, Carmarthen, right? Callum Pearson for Pembrokeshire, Carmarthen, and Meads join. Okay. Hang on, Nick. This is a question for you.
That's a question for me, yeah.
Yeah, well, so I'll read it out. I'll read it out so people know what's been asked. For Pembrokeshire, Carmarthen, and Meads would presumably join Division 1 Pembrokeshire, given their strength. Would that mean two teams may need to be relegated from Division 1 to accommodate Meads and Carmarthen? That's from Callum and Cardigan.
The short answer is not necessarily. As you know, in Pembrokeshire, we have been very liberal with the rules to ensure that we have, if you like, regional rules within Pembrokeshire to try and keep Pembrokeshire squash alive, which I've had this conversation with the Pembrokeshire teams on a number of occasions. And yes, you're quite right, Meads and Carmarthen would probably, certainly Meads A and Carmarthen A, would be in the top division of whatever Pembrokeshire structure is there. But that's a conversation we can have outside of the new southeast and southwest, as Pembrokeshire would still be an autonomous region, as it were, and we will do what we can to keep squash alive in Pembrokeshire, as we have done for the last few seasons. As you know, we have teams of 4 rather than 5, so there are more teams just to make the leagues bigger. With these additional teams, we may need to or could go back to teams of 5 if that was requested by Pembrokeshire. So the short answer is we'll be flexible with it.
Okay, there is a follow-up in the chat, just so people are aware, as I appreciate everyone can see the chat. We're not sure yet if Meads intend to submit a new team or intend to continue playing Essentials Pembroke A Exiles. Wait to clarify, that's from Nick Joseph, if you know Nick. Another question for you, Nick, I'm afraid. Risca A will be relegated from Prem B. Will they enter Division 1 or will they be ranked accordingly to squash levels?
Will be ranked accordingly due to their squash levels of the top 5 players.
Okay, and just for fair process, Nick has added a subsequent comment. Nick Dyer, we have heard that there are some journeys in the new structure below Prem that are still 50 miles. Yet a similar distance is considered too far for clubs to travel to meet. Okay, that's continuing previous point. Right, the chat that's the last comment in the chat, and I'm just checking to see if we've got any further hands. No. Oh, Pat Westlake. Sorry, Pat. Nearly missed you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I came slightly late, but I've got the slides, which is the important bit. We're unlucky enough in Old Pens and Penarth to be bottom left of East League, and whilst it's not assured exactly who we're going to have in the division next time, I know that if we've got Monmouth and Abergavenny, we're going to lose people. We struggle to get people to sub up into Prem because of the distances, and that's to go to Llanelli, etc. It's an hour for us to get to each way to get to Abergavenny and Monmouth, and people are just not going to do it. So they will vote with their feet. I do find it slightly strange in terms of the timing. I accept something had to be done. I'm not denying that, but I do question the timing. Basically, if next season, post-Christmas, goes badly, you're giving the entire summer for people to opt out of squash in September, rather than introduce it in September and give it 2 seasons back to back. So I question bringing it in now. I think even if you don't lose players in the next part, I think you will see a hemorrhage with players in September. And I think all your good work and your good thoughts is just going to fall about. I really do.
Okay.
I think this is going to be, people are just going to drop out of team squash. I really do.
Okay. Do Phil or others want to respond to that? I mean, I don't think that's hugely different to comments made by others, that there is a risk factor here. And yes, we will be very closely monitoring numbers.
There'll be a risk factor whenever it's introduced. I don't see it, we as a group didn't see it would make any difference. The reason we brought it in now and didn't put it off any longer is because of the concern that we're going to lose more clubs and more players in the southeast and the southwest region. So putting it off for another 6 months or longer, or 9 months, we didn't think was in the best interest of these regions. It's easy for people to sit there shaking their heads, but there's a lot of work gone into this. It's not an arbitrary decision. We have gone through the right process. We have listened to a lot of people. And I think, the last slide that Dave put up on his presentation, where, we've asked people to consider that. It's obvious that a lot of people have considered just their club, and that's understandable. I get that. But we've had to consider squash across the whole of South Wales as a whole. And that's what we've done. And that's our job as a governing body. So that's why we put this in place. And, to your point, Pat, I take on board what you're saying, but we'll see how it goes. We don't see that introducing it now is going to make any difference if we leave it for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, there's a swings and roundabouts there around the travel, lighter nights as you go into the spring and onwards, isn't there? There's and we've batted this around a lot amongst us. We certainly did this on Thursday when we met prior to this meeting. So I think, it's not perfect. It will never be perfect, but we have to make a decision and we have to move and be somewhat agile because of the challenges that we see elsewhere. There's a question for you, Dave Evans, from Nick Joseph. Where would the nearest club be for a decent squash player from Pembrokeshire have to travel to and be able to access the top flight in Wales? And there's a few assumptions in there, but I'll throw that one to you.
Well, thanks for that, Richard.
That's all right.
Well, I guess where quite a lot of the Carmarthen players are playing now. They obviously near Siren Thomas, for example, is playing at Bridgend, but that's quite far. That's their choice. People, Llanelli, Swansea, those sort of clubs which have been there for the last few seasons, really.
Thank
you. If we're talking Premier Division, if that's what he meant, sorry.
I'm assuming that is, and I'm happy with that as an answer. Okay, Jeff, do you want to come back in?
Well, yeah, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, frankly, I find Phil's comments somewhat disingenuous. You've given lots of consideration to all of this, and you've indicated that you've taken some time to consider all this. But the facts of life are, you are asking us as the clubs to consider this in effectively about a fortnight. And that frankly feels grossly unfair. I would ask that you reconsider that. And one of the other comments was, why has it got to be done so quickly? On any other decision, we have to put the proposal forward to the AGM, and it takes some months for this to transpire. So why can we not take whatever decision you're going to take, but take it in a slightly more measured term and make it effective from the next September 2026, when we as clubs have an opportunity to consider what is best for our club? Because Phil, you make the comment that you're doing what's best in South Wales and you somewhat decry what the views of the clubs. We are acting for our clubs and we're doing what is best for our clubs within Squash Wales. We are a part of that body, and we ask you to consider that. So I would ask you to seriously consider that this is not enacted for January 2026 and is deferred until next September at the earliest.
So first of all, we'll take your request on board. I answered your questions previously. Nothing was disingenuous. You're entitled to your opinion. We'll take that on board as well, as we have done with everybody on this call. And we'll discuss that ourselves afterwards.
Okay, I've got Alex, got your hand up. Do you want to go?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, can I just ask Jeff a question? Because sorry, I'm Rabina Squash.
Ask it through me, but yes, go for it. Go
on. So I used to play in the East Central Leagues a few years back. So I got a big affinity there. So I'm quite shocked that the East Central Leagues are the ones who are getting the big win out of this proposal. So personally, I'm just asking, like, your lower level players who, from my memory, you have like 3 teams all playing each other in every league, every season. What do they want, basically? Because I thought they'd be jumping on the opportunity of getting to come down and play in Rabina, play a card, that sort of stuff.
Well, Alex, I'll try and answer that. And it's an interesting point. But they want to play squash. They would like to play different players. But what they don't want to be doing is travelling to Cardiff and beyond. And I'll take the absolute worst case scenario, Old Penarthians, which I think from Monmouth is something like 60 miles. And if you're asking me to send a guy with a squash level of 600 squash levels to drive from Monmouth to Penarth to get stuffed, have something to eat and come back, well, I've got to tell you, fella, it ain't going to happen.
No, it's the reason I ask, because obviously, unfortunately, the East League, and I have a massive affinity there. I just can't see any other option, really, if you want to try and mix it up a bit and try and get those players, give your club a chance of actually, getting more people in who are interested. You aren't just whittling away, going, I've played the same 3 guys. I'm playing at my club, just home games all the time, basically. Or it's just Abergavenny versus Monmouth every week. But that's my memory of being in that league. And eventually I left the league and went and joined Rabina because I was, I got tired of playing.
But Alex,
okay, gentlemen.
Thereby, Alex, you've made exactly the point. You clearly play at a level where you are prepared to travel. And I understand that. And we have at least one of our sides would be in that same position. But when you're in the lower levels of squash, you're traveling, you want to have a game of squash. You don't want to travel 50 miles and then come back. It just isn't going to happen. I'm sorry, but you've got to get real about the various levels of people who are playing squash and their motivation for doing it.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough.
I agree, Jeff, what you're saying, but it's hard to have a league structure for all different levels. Do you know what I mean? There's one league structure for all.
Okay, gents, let's just take a step back for a minute. Thank you, Alex, for your comments. Much appreciated, Jeff. You've had your say back. That's fine. I'm just conscious we're now at 8:15. I'm just going to quickly go to pick up another few comments in the chat here. Mark, you've asked about constitutional situation here. I've answered that previously. You may have missed that part, but yes, this is not a constitutional issue. The league constitution sits under the broader Squash Wales constitution, and the board and therefore the office are empowered to make changes as they see fit, if necessary, for the good of the game, essentially. Subsequent similar conversation about timeline, which is a theme coming through. That's fine. We would certainly take that on board. Mark, and then you've asked about Merthyr, which we've also already covered between Nick and someone else who apologize. I thought got asked that question. Matthew Wart, what about the players in East who want to play better players and are willing to travel, Jeff? How is it fair on them to spend another 6 months? Okay, thank you, Matthew. I mean, this is the dilemma that we have, is that we have to be the master to everyone. And unfortunately, that is difficult to provide a competitive squash, as we mentioned, good games that are matched, etc. Players having a good experience. Adrian Best perhaps can have a vote whether clubs thinks to be deferred. Okay, we will take that on board. Pat Westlake, bring back the South Wales League as an intermediate between Prem 1 and Div 1, worked for years. Okay, fair enough. Fair comment. Right. Anyone else for anything else? No? Okay. Yeah. Nick, would you be able to share the geographic map of the new league structure? Yes, we can do that. Okay. Kerry, it's no longer South Wales League. Well, the terminology may not be correct. It may not be maybe a South Wales and Pembrokeshire Leagues system, but we could probably argue on the semantics of that. Okay, Mark. Yeah, how can I send a junior to 50 miles to play squash? There seems a disparity between what Merthyr will do versus what Nick's Edwards' numbers say. So I think we'll pick that up outside of here. Okay, because Nick has gone through a list of teams there and distances. So I'm not going to pull Google Maps out now and start debating that in this meeting. Half of Swansea welcome these changes and to change for the better. Okay. All right. Okay, Mark, we know your point, Mark. We've seen that, okay? We've had that debate in the meeting already. We can have a conversation outside of here about distances Merthyr may have to travel or not, and what Google Maps says. Right. Okay, just fine. Okay, I think so. I think we will call it a day here, folks. We will take on board, as we said, we've recorded the meeting, so that'll give the board and the league working group a bit of time to go back through this. But notwithstanding, Nick will still need some information prior to leagues, whatever is happening. So please do adhere to those deadlines. And Nick, you said you can have information out next week. So please do respond accordingly, because we still need to have the practicalities still need to be taking place in the meantime while any conversations are going on. So please do try and assist us with that. Appreciate, things are changing, but go back to Dave's final slide, which is that we are trying to make changes that have a long-term interest of the game at heart here. So without further ado, folks, we will call it a day there. Thank you to all that have contributed late on a Sunday night. It's much appreciated. I'm glad we've had good dialogue. So, okay, thank you very much, folks. Thank you. Good evening. Goodbye.